if you were to ask me, are Jehovah's Witnesses Christian? My simple answer is no. Is that ambiguous in any way?
Yes, the way you had phrased this the last 2 or 3 minutes, yes, it was confusing, and that's why I said that.
And so that's a simple
Why
statement, of
don't you
which I
think they're
said,
Christian, John?
oh, yeah, that was the question that was asked. And I was talking about the teachings of Jesus Christ, the gospel
Yeah, and
of
you
what
Yeah, which
misunderstood what
Christ
specific
James
taught
said,
teachings?
and
and who he
he was
is.
talking about Muslims. And you were
Yeah.
talking
So
about Jehovah's Witnesses. There was a
unbelievable.
miscommunication.
Okay. So
Which teachings,
now the
John?
original question. Yeah, I don't have a problem answering that, Jake. So would be something like the claims of deity, for one.
They believe Jesus is God.
Jehovah's Witnesses? That's not my
Yeah.
understanding. They believe that he is a God, not the God.
Exactly, but they believe he's a God. He's divine.
Yeah, but they also believe that all of us can become gods. So I mean, that we can
No,
be. Well, they
no,
do. From my
that's not true.
understanding, that they believe that.
No,
So no,
no. Where are you getting that from? Those are
it's
Mormons, John.
Mormons.
That's not Jehovah's
Oh,
Witness, bro.
okay.
So you
Then,
have a problem
mhm.
with someone that says that Jesus is God or divine, but not equal to the Father. Correct?
Equal in substance to the Father. That would be the better way to phrase that.
Yeah, yeah. So anyone who doesn't believe that is not a Christian. Is that the claim?
It's not consistent with the Christianity that I understand. It would be the better way to say that.
Come on, John. Is anyone who believes that not a Christian?
Yeah, I'm not here to say that who is and who's not a Christian. No, seriously. But however, I have a
You
good
just did,
scientific.
dude. You literally just did. You
Yeah,
literally
I
just
don't.
did.
Yeah, I
And
don't.
now I'm trying to take that and see if you're willing to extrapolate from it, or you're just going to be inconsistent and say what makes Jehovah's Witnesses not Christian isn't sufficient for other groups. And I'm just wondering why
Yeah,
that would be the case.
yeah. I don't consider Jehovah's Witnesses to be consistent with the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is what I said. I don't know why that's
Yeah, and
such a problematic
you gave
statement.
a reason why. Is that a sufficient reason, such that if someone else falls under that
Yeah,
category, they wouldn't be a
it
Christian?
doesn't really matter to me who subscribes to my opinion because it is an opinion. And so, yeah, I'm not trying to claim some sort of fact or fact of the matter. And so, if you guys are thinking that's what I'm doing, I'm not.
No, I'm just
So
trying to check for consistency to see what your view actually is, John. I mean, what's wrong with that?
It's not very difficult.
so
It's not
John, let
rocket
me
science to say that I think that Jehovah's Witnesses are highly problematic as far as my understanding of what
Oh,
Christianity represents
you
and
said
what the
they're not
gospel.
Christian. You said they're not Christian.
Yeah, in my view,
so
it's not consistent with
John,
Christianity or
let me
following
give you
Christian meaning followers of Jesus Christ and what
John.
he taught.
I'm not gonna attack you. I'm just gonna give you some little bit of Jehovah Witness information. So they believe that there's one person God. They believe that the first thing He created was Jesus Christ. They also believe that He was on earth. He was Michael or the archangel. So that would be a
Yeah,
fundamental issue that
so
separates them
those
from
are
us.
three problematic bullet points right
Yeah.
there.
So James, so I'm saying to you, then you agree with John's statement, but are you willing to be more clear and simply say that anyone who does not believe that Jesus or the Son is co-equal and co-eternal with the Father, that they're not Christian? Is that your position?
My position would be anyone who doesn't affirm one being in three persons is not a Christian. Now, if you have like a modern day churchgoer and maybe confused with modalism, but they would assert at least there's one God, the Father's God, the Spirit's God, and the Son is God, I would accept that as Christianity. Um, I think that's fairly clear.
So what if I show numerous church fathers before the Council of Nicaea that believe that very same thing?
Sorry, I didn't hear your question, Jake. You got like cut off.
Can you hear me?
I heard there's just someone else talking in the background.
Yeah, I said, What if I can show you church fathers that believe the same thing, that believe that Jesus is God
Ooh.
or divine in some sense, but he
Haiti,
wasn't
you're hot
co-equal
miking. Someone mute
or
Haiti.
co-eternal
Someone please mute Haiti.
with the
Coming,
Father?
coming, coming,
Please
coming,
mute
coming.
Haiti. She's hot miking.
You mean like someone like Justin Martyr or something like that?
Yeah, you can use him as an example, but I can go through a list. So would you say that they're not Christians?
What was your question again, Jake? Everybody just kept cutting
Yeah.
in on that.
I'm
Just try to stay to
saying
you.
to you, if I can show you church fathers that believed the same thing before the Council of Nicaea, would you say that they weren't Christians?
What do you mean by the same thing?
They didn't believe that Jesus was co-equal and co-eternal with the Father, that he was the second person of the Trinity.
Well, I didn't affirm that the co-equal, co-eternal was something that I would expect every Christian to necessarily have thought through. Now, should they go into Christology? Yes, but I don't think that not knowing the phrase co-equal, co-eternal I don't think that would not make you a Christian.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying to you, like you talk about Jehovah's Witnesses, which call Jesus basically the angel of the Lord from the Old Testament,
But
and
he's
that
not
was
really
just
God. He's
yeah, but
absolutely a created being, though, is in the
yeah,
archangel Michael, and so they have some
but
clear.
James, I'm saying to you, I can show you church fathers that explained it exactly the same way and did not believe that the Son was the same God as the Father.
Yeah, but wait, Jake, you
But
have
they don't.
church fathers who believe that Jesus is Michael? Are you serious?
I didn't say Michael specifically. I said angel of the Lord, and they describe him as the angel of the Lord. And in light of that, don't think that he was actually equal to the Father.
Let me answer Jake real quick. I don't, from anything that I've read of Jehovah Witnesses, they don't put him as in a god. They
They
put
do.
him as God's first creation.
They
They
do.
may revere him in a sense, but I've
No.
never heard that they would ever consider him the God.
So
They might
no, they
consider
don't.
him
They don't.
a
Yeah, they don't.
secondary created kind of God, but they would never ever confuse him with Jehovah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm saying that Justin Martyr does the same thing. He argues the exact same thing in his dialogue with Trypho, the Jew.
Yeah, and if you want to send me a quote, I'll definitely read what you're saying, and then
Yeah, I can. I can send you
I've seen
numerous
some of
quotes.
them,
I mean, I've
but
I've read them out plenty of times.
well, no, I'm not saying.
Uh,
Look, Jake, I'm not
Trypho,
challenging
listen,
your
I'm
reading. I'm just
saying to
saying that
you,
I'd like to read
yeah,
the
I'm just saying,
quotes.
yeah, I'll send you them. But I'm just saying to you is that Justin Martyr explicitly says that Jesus is another God that is numerically distinct from the Father. Explicitly, word for word.
Yep. Send me the quote, where it's found, and then I'll read the quote, and I'll also read
Yeah, if
the.
you give me a minute or two, I'll read it. I'm just
Oh,
at
no
work.
worries. Hey, I know you're good on your receipts, Jake. I know, I know you got this stuff ready. Um, my issue with John is that, like, I think that you should be more firm. If you say somebody's not a Christian, they're not a Christian. If you have certain criteria, like I think mine was clear, is that as long as somebody recognizes there's one God, and they would say the Father's God, the Spirit's God, and the Son is God, I would say that puts you within the realm of Christianity. But now
but
you might
James,
have another problem. One second, John. You might have another problem, like if you don't believe that Jesus Christ died for your sins, well, then I think that that puts you outside of the fold. So each statement has to be situational.
I question whether you even heard what I said. Do you actually think that I'm including even possibly, that the Muslim or the Jehovah's Witness could be a Christian? Is that what you're hearing from me?
So what I heard was this statement, John, where you were stating belief, but you weren't wanting to necessarily make that claim of demonstration. And so my issue with was not you saying that Jehovah Witnesses were Christian, but that sometimes I'd like to see you more firm in what you believe and willing to get it challenged a bit. Because if we state what we believe and we stand on it, even if we get knocked on our butts in some conversations periodically, it'll force us to go back and then to re-examine our deeply held beliefs. But I think
I don't
sometimes
know.
if we play defense and we don't really want to or so if we play offense and don't really want to defend anything, I don't know that we challenge ourselves enough.
Okay. Hey, James, this would be my statement. I do not believe that Jehovah's Witnesses represent Christianity as I understand Christianity. Is that a problematic statement, or is that like not strong enough for you, or ambiguous in some way? That statement that I just made, in and of itself, do you have a problem of the way I worded that?
No, not there.
That's all I've been saying. That's what I don't understand. Are you hearing
except for the
something
statement
different?
belief. He's just not saying they aren't. He's saying he just doesn't believe it.
That would be my issue is when we start
No,
going in
I could
further.
even be more specific.
Say that.
I believe that what they espouse is not consistent with Christianity as I understand it. Is that better for you, Rapscuttle?
Why do you keep prefacing it with "I believe"? Why not just say they're not Christians? That's all you have to say.
He actually did say it earlier, but then he kind of been backsliding ever since. So, James, you ready for me to read you a quote?
Yeah, and if you could send it to me too, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So this is Justin Martyr in his dialogue with Trypho, chapter 56. He says, I shall attempt to persuade you, since you have understood the scriptures, of the truth of what I say, that there is, and that there is said to be, another God and Lord, subject to the maker of all things, who is called an angel, because he announces to men whatsoever the maker of all things, above whom there is no other God, wishes to announce to them. So he's quite clear in stating that, and what he describes is he's talking about the Messiah, who's called an angel, is another God who is subject to the maker of all things, i.e., he is not the maker of all things, and the one who is above him, there is no other God above him. Again, he says in the same chapter, I shall endeavor to persuade you that he who is said to have appeared to Abraham and to Jacob and to Moses, and who is called God, is distinct from him who made all things, numerically distinct. Again, in chapter 60, let me just read one last quote. He who has but the smallest intelligence will not venture to assert that the maker and father of all things, having left all supercelestial matters, was visible on a little portion of the earth. So he actually mocks the idea that God, or the maker of all things in that sense, would actually appear and be visible on earth.
Yeah.
So it's
So
quite
my
clear he
question
calls
is,
him another God, and he's numerically distinct. They're not the same God.
right. My question is, did not Justin Martyr have access to the epistles of Paul as well as the Gospels? Was he in rejection of these
Oh, obviously he didn't
writings, or?
interpret them in the same way. Obviously he didn't interpret them in the same way.
I think it's
And
pretty
he and
explicit that Jesus Christ is the maker, though. Wouldn't you agree?
what's that? Sorry.
I think they're explicit to say that Jesus Christ is the maker of all things.
Who is not Justin Martyr? He just denied that.
No, the epistles as well as the Gospels, or more so the
Well,
epistles.
I'm not getting into that. I'm just simply saying, based on those readings, if I'm actually portraying them accurately, and I can give you, which I don't want to bore the other people in the room, but you can look at secondary sources that will admit this. For example, John Henry Newman explicitly says that if you look at Justin Martyr's writings, it appears that he was basically an Arian, which is what the Jehovah's Witnesses are. They're just modern day version of Arians, because the Arians didn't have a problem with saying that Jesus or the Son was God. They just would always qualify it with that he was God in a different sense. He's not equal to the Father.
But it's pretty
So,
well established that Arianism is heresy. You know that, right, Jay?
yeah, exactly. So I'm saying to you, what do you do with the supposed church fathers who traditional churches like the Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox Church claim that figures like Justin Martyr had apostolic succession. What do you do with them when they actually, on fundamental doctrines, were conveying heretical views?
Well, to me, that's more of a Catholic problem when you get into guys like Origen or Tertullian or any one of these guys who had all sorts of views, whether it's universalism or whatever the case is. I think that it just happened to be people who have these views, and it's not orthodox in terms of how we understand Orthodox
Yeah, so
today.
I'm saying, are you willing to say that Justin Martyr was a heretic?
As far as what you read, I think they're heterodox, sure.
So what I want to say, John, is just a response to your saying it's just a Catholic issue. No, I think every religion has to explain why people early on in the faith would seem to make statements that disagree with what they currently have, or have a reason to explain them. I don't think that you can, or anybody can just hand wave away every statement made by the first couple of generations of Christians. In the sense, too, that I've been looking into Islam for the past 6 months, and I look at what does the first three generations say. So whereas in, John, a year and a half ago, I would have taken Islam all the way off the table. I currently can't do that, given what I've been looking into. But so when you're comparing it, you have to look, what do these generations say? And you have to critique, why am I throwing this guy under the bus when he had access to potentially more information than what I do now, or more direct sources? And so I just don't think like
Wait a
saying it's
minute,
just a
James.
Catholic problem
Could
addresses
you
it, John.
could you kind of explain to me what you mean by taking Islam off the table?
A year and a half ago, I was completely Islam was off the table as not being a possibility,
A possibility of what?
being true.
Oh, okay. And so
In the
you,
past 6 months, I cannot
mhm.
make that hard of a claim on it. Just looking at Islam, there's
Wow,
some things that I thought was
wow.
inconsistent that I believe are more consistent. And I want to make this
Yeah, but
clear.
John's going to divert from that. He's gonna focus on this topic now, James, instead of dealing with the
No,
other
no, I
Fine.
issues.
don't have to. I'm just kind of like a little wow on that statement. That's all.
Well, so Jake is right. You are going to try to focus on that. I didn't say I was converting to Islam. I didn't say that, I'm going to become a Muslim tomorrow, but I do keep logical and rational possibilities open for everything, even at some point going back to being an atheist. But I was just using that, John, as an example to show you that we can't just say, hey, this is just a Catholic problem, what some of the early church fathers said. Those are things that we as Christians have to explain as well.
Me as a Protestant, as far as the ecumenical councils, as far as the creeds, as far as the church fathers, they're just humans. They're just individuals that have views that could be imperfect in certain things, and so forth. And so, does that mean that they can't contribute to Christianity and the doctrines of Christianity? Of course not, right? But they're not some sort of infallible. Thus saith the Lord type of
Nobody's saying they
doctrine.
are, John. But you wouldn't be
I
concerned.
understand.
But you wouldn't be concerned if there was a general consensus that nobody actually held to a Nicene Trinitarian view prior to like the 3rd century. You wouldn't be concerned with that?
Well, I mean, I've actually been involved in a lot of these discussions with regard to the assertion that the Trinity was some sort of development that culminated into the Nicene Creed, and that it was not viewed early on. People like Justin Martyr that you read was there are examples of other church fathers are given. In fact, Ijaz, for example, was a good person that would very extensively talk about this topic, and I've heard these particular points, and I've heard the counterpoints to these points from either the Eastern Orthodox or whatever the case is, and to me, it's not compelling as to that it was the Trinity was an invention. I
No,
don't
no,
hold
but
to that.
forget about that for now. We're
Mhm.
saying I'm asking you if you became convinced that that actually was the case, right? Then would that be concerning?
That certain people had views that are not orthodox, such as maybe
Not
Arianism,
only
something like that.
certain that you could say consensus or overwhelming majority did not actually believe in the Trinity. You're saying you wouldn't find that concerning if you came to that
Now,
conclusion?
if there was an overwhelming number of people pre-Nicene Creed that did not adhere to some sort of Trinitarian view, would that be concerning to
Yeah,
me?
or even consensus,
Um,
yeah.
not necessarily. And the reason I say that is because sometimes revelation, such as how the Jews understood, the nature of Yahweh Himself as some sort of plurality. I think what's his name about the two powers in the Second Temple. All of these things are they just some sort of evolutionary developments, or are they just increase in revealed in a certain time period? Post Moses, post Christ. I certainly think that's possible, and so it doesn't really concern me all that much.
Yeah, well, for a lot of other Christians and maybe James as well, I don't know. It would be concerning because if God was actually guiding His church through the Holy Spirit, that's not what you would generally expect to see. You would expect to see people actually believing in what the true faith actually is, especially if rejecting it entails a heretic, that you would be considered a heretic and damned to hell. So I think that's pretty reasonable for people to have that sort of view, and that's why they are concerned with it. And that's why people try to push back on it and establish that there were Trinitarians very early on.
Right, and that's what the Eastern Orthodox do. That does matter to them, and they do fight it tooth and nail to try to argue. No, no, no. This was adhered to early on in Christianity, and that's what you're talking about, Jake, right? So those particular individuals, it definitely matters to them.
I'm saying to most Christians it does. I'm saying you're in the minority.
I think it's like worthy of consideration. I think it's notable. I think all of these things, but ultimately, is it a something that defeats Christianity or something like that? I don't even think it would do that. Yeah, if true, that is, assuming it's true.
Anyway, so James, just to be clear, if what I read you became convinced that that actually was Justin Martyr's view, would you consider him a heretic?
I would have to potentially put him in a heretic category, or I would have to rethink of how I define a heretic and what is necessary for Christian doctrine. Those would be things I'd have to reevaluate. But I don't think that I can just dismiss it as, hey, this is just a Catholic problem or an Orthodox problem. Also, sola scriptura is basically scripture preferred, but we don't ignore, all the Christians that came before us. I don't think that makes any sense.
Do you guys
Yeah, I
affirm that
agree.
a heretic is actually worse than an unbeliever because the heretic is like corrupting believers as the unbeliever isn't?
I think in some ways, Haiti.
I think I recall you guys saying that
Um,
before. That's why I asked.
and I kind of look at Philippians 1 in the sense that these people who have selfish ambitions and they're preaching Christ. When you see Paul's reaction to these individuals that want to just stir up trouble for him, he rejoices in that because Christ is preached. And so these particular heretics, uh, can we albeit maybe that they're preaching a false Christ in a sense, but are they preaching the person of Christ? And in that sense, they are. So it's kind of can be looked at two different ways.
John, are you willing to say that Justin Martyr is a heretic?
Well, I certainly would think that that he can have unorthodox views. I think in the passages that Jake read, I mean, I take his word for it as far as the context of what I mean. Just by listening to it, the Father, the Maker, all of these types of comments, a subject to, all of these things would indicate some sort of like
He said
Arianism, right?
another
Like you said,
God, John, separate and distinct,
and
numerically
even that
distinct.
kind of and even that type of comment. And I think you said something about numerical as
John?
well. And
John?